because we don't actually advertise these calls more broadly. So we've set it up so that folks are all participating by telephone rather than by just listening in on your computer. And this allows us to unmute you so that you can ask questions and provide your own feedback during the presentation and the call. So if you do have something that you'd like to share or a question that you'd like to ask, on your control panel there's a little button that looks like a hand. You can click that button and it virtually raises your hand, and then that allows me to unmute you. And so I would unmute you, and then at that point you'd be able to ask your question. Some folks on the call, it looks like, didn't enter their PIN numbers. Most people did, but if you didn't enter your PIN number, then it's not going to be possible for me to unmute you. So if you haven't already entered your PIN number, it should be on the control panel. You enter pound, your PIN number, and then pound again, and then that will enable me to unmute you if at any point you raise your hand and want to ask a question. If you don't want to actually speak, you can also use the question panel to type in questions. And the last thing that I want to say is that presentation materials will be posted at our website, cacollegepathways.org. Now, everybody should have received the materials this morning. We sent them out to everybody who registered for the call, and so those will be the same materials that get posted on the website along with a recording of today's web seminar. Next slide, please. So before we jump into the actual information about the training that we're going to be talking about today, I wanted to just cover a few general announcements. So we talked on our last call about SB 1023, which is the bill that's in the legislature right now to expand support for foster youth at community colleges through targeted slots within EOPS. Wanted to let folks know, if you haven't already heard, that the bill passed its first committee, which is the Senate Education Committee. We had a great turnout of foster youth who provided testimony, and not only did the bill pass the committee, but actually everybody who was present on the committee indicated that they wanted to sign on as a co-author for the bill because people were very enthusiastic. So we're really excited about that. The next major hurdle is going to be the Appropriations Committee, and so stay tuned for more details about how you can help move this bill, continue to move this bill forward through the next phases of the process. Second thing I wanted to say, for those of you who are on the call with a community college, we are going to begin work on preparing a template for something called the Community College Equity Plan. So every campus in the community college system right now is working on this document called an equity plan. And there's the possibility that there's going to be $100 million in the budget this year to implement these equity plans, which is why the community colleges are now working on them. They have a deadline of November to complete them. These equity plans primarily focus on equity for different ethnic populations, gender, that kind of thing. We're going to actually be putting together some documents for how campuses can incorporate support for foster youth into their equity plans, and the hope is that some of that $100 million that hopefully, if it survives the budget process that will be coming to the community colleges for equity plan implementation, that some of that might be available to help support foster youth. So we're going to be creating some documents for folks that you can use on your campuses for that purpose. For those of you on the call who are with a CSU or UC campus, I wanted to let you know that we're putting together a survey. We're trying to collect some basic information about the numbers of foster youth on campuses and the kind of support available and some of the outcome indicators. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's going to be coming your way. We tried to keep it brief, and so if you can take a few minutes and provide that information to us when you receive that in the next few weeks, we would greatly appreciate it. The last thing I wanted to say is folks are probably aware of the various programs that the John Burton Foundation offers that provide direct grants to students. I just wanted to do a quick reminder so that folks know about them. We have our Backpacks to Success program that provides gift cards, the Burton Book Fund, where your bookstore can actually set up with the John Burton Foundation so that foster youth can go in and get credit towards books. And then a new program that we just got funding for from Sleep Train, which is our Critical Needs Fund, and this is for the 9 Bay Area counties only, and it provides up to $2,000 per student for any sort of emergency need that arises. And I put the contact information is diane@johnburtonfoundation.org. If you are not already connected with these 3 programs and you would like to be, definitely send her an email and she can make sure you're connected so that you're accessing all those resources for your students. Next slide. So in addition to myself this morning, I'm excited to have Devin on the call, who you already heard from with our little technical difficulties. She's going to be sharing some information. We also have Dirisha Williams and Rusty Johnson with Foster Club on the call, and Brianna Boykin with Norco College is also going to be sharing some information on this morning's call. Next slide. Quick overview of the agenda for this morning. The focus of the call is on the new curriculum that we just created, which is a curriculum that's available for all of you to use to do training on your campus with faculty and staff around the needs of foster youth. So we're going to talk about some general training tips, resources that are available, the lesson plan, how the trainer's guide that we put together is organized, do a quick review of the presentation slides, and then have an opportunity for Q&A. And if you do have questions that come up during the course of the presentation, do feel free to raise your hand or send them to us through the question panel. And actually, before I jump into the rest, I do see Tina has raised her hand. And sometimes people do this by mistake, but I'm going to unmute you, Tina. Did you have a question?
I did do it by mistake, sorry.
Okay, no problem. That happens a lot. All right, so we'll mute Tina again. And Tina, I'm going to put your hand down. But feel free to use that if anybody does have a question during the course of the presentation. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to start with some general information about the training. So first is that the materials that we provided are for public use. You can use them in whatever way you want. You can distribute them widely. You can take pieces of them if you want. You know, we want this to be as useful to you as possible. So if you want to just use some of the slides or some of the graphics for a presentation that you're doing, feel free to do that. You know, in whatever way you want to share this, you want to forward it on to other folks. The idea here is that this is a resource for you, and so feel free to use it in whatever way is most helpful to you. The intended target audience for the curriculum are faculty and staff who work on college campuses. The training is designed for use by both 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges and universities. It's structured in a way that kind of assumes that the audience doesn't know that much about foster youth. It does provide a fairly basic overview of what it means to be a foster youth. So that's how it's set up, and of course, if you have different audiences, you can modify it however you see fit. The time frame, it's set up to be delivered in 90 minutes. But again, you know, if you do need to modify it, if you're in a situation where somebody's only given you 30 minutes on an agenda to do the training, you can cut and paste and sort of pick and choose which sections of it you think are most relevant. The training can be particularly powerful if it's co-delivered with a foster youth from your campus, and so we really encourage you, whenever possible, to recruit students who would be interested in sharing their experience and developing presentation skills to join you in the presentation. We're going to talk more about this later, and we've got Rusty and Dirisha from Foster Club who are also going to be sharing some additional information about how the youth voice piece can be incorporated into the presentation to make it that much more powerful and effective. In terms of preparing for delivering the content, I'm going to talk in more detail about how it's divided up. There's instructions for each slide in the trainer's guide that it contains notes about how to present the material, suggestions for how you might want to engage the audience, as well as places where you can engage the youth's voice. There are certain sections that require you to provide some information in advance. So you will want to do some preparation before delivering the training. Like we have a placeholder slide where you can provide some information about the foster youth statistics from your county, or provide some information about your particular campus-based support program. And so you'll want to make sure that you fill in that information in the slides before you present the training. And then in terms of what you actually need to deliver this training, you need the PowerPoint slides and obviously a projector for the PowerPoint slides. There is one exercise that Devin's going to talk about when she goes through the slides that requires 3 different stacks of colored Post-it notes. So that's something that you want to have on hand. And then there's a couple of places where we provide some links to videos, and so you would need to have internet access if you want to be able to show those videos. Next slide. So the trainer's guide provides some additional information about resources and readings that you can use as background materials. There's a section on recommended readings, which has some publications, most of which, well, there's links for all of the publications so you know where to get them. There's some additional readings if you want more background on the material that is being presented as a training. And then if you really want to go in depth, we have some suggestions for some books that you can look at as well. Next slide. So the way the training is laid out, there's basically 5 sections plus kind of a closing wrap-up slide. The first part of the trainer's guide presents a suggested lesson plan. So basically we indicate our suggested time frame for each section. So 20 minutes for section 2 and 30 minutes for section 3, that kind of thing, as a way to help you to be able to organize your time as you do the training. And obviously, again, that's based on a 90-minute time frame. If you have more or less time than that, you can modify as needed. Next slide. So I want to talk just a little bit about how this trainer's guide is organized. So for each of the 5 sections that we lay out, it starts with showing what the materials are that you need, which is essentially which slides that section covers. It then goes on to provide training tips and discussion points, which include 3 different pieces. So first, there's presenter notes. So the presenter notes provide additional detail to fill out the information that's on the slide. So for example, the slide itself might just say, the title might be Experiences Foster Youth Safe, and it might say one of the bullet points is removal from home. And then the trainer's notes provide some additional detail that you would speak about during the training about what the psychological effect is of removal from home, what the impact is of the loss that occurs when somebody is removed from home. So for each slide, each bullet point, there's additional detail that will be shared verbally by the trainer. The next section is engagement opportunities. So these are suggestions for making the presentation interactive, so you're not just standing up there and talking the entire time. So for a lot of the slides, we'll put a note that says, you know, here's a place where you can ask participants to reflect on what they've learned thus far, or here's a place when you can ask participants to share their own ideas about how they can help foster youth in this particular arena, or things like that. So we sort of make some suggestions for how you can make it interactive. And then finally, we also have pieces where it indicates where if you have a youth co-presenting with you, places that you can bring them in to provide firsthand experience. And Darish is going to talk about that in a minute. A couple other things I wanted to say about this is that all of the information that's in the trainer's guide under presenter notes is also in the presenter notes section of the PowerPoint. So if you were to print out the PowerPoint slides in the note view where it actually shows the trainer's notes on each page. The material is identical. So we did that so that you don't have to go back and forth between the PowerPoint and the trainer's guide. If you wanted to, you could print out just the PowerPoint slides with the presenter's notes, and you'll get all that same information, all of the presenter notes, the engagement opportunities, the youth engagement opportunities, etc. So next slide. So this is just a sample of what I was just talking about. So you'll see here kind of how the trainer's guide is laid out. It'll say the PowerPoint slides for this section are numbers 1 through 4, provide some presenter notes about what you're going to say with this slide. You'll see it says youth engagement opportunity. This is, description of what you would ask the youth to prepare for, and then engagement opportunity where you would have an opportunity to engage with the audience. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Dyresha Williams, who is a student and youth ambassador with Foster Club, who's going to talk a little bit more from her perspective as a young person about how to use the youth engagement piece of this training.
Hi. So for the youth engagement, I first want to say I think it's very important to have as part of your presentation, so that way the other campus liaisons, they can see and they can hear from an actual youth perspective why it would be important for them to be part of this. And so that way they can hear personal examples from that youth. And in this trainer's guide, all these questions are all strategically asked. So basically, we're not asking foster youth to go into their stories from the beginning. We're asking them the specific questions about education and how you guys on campuses can help them with their education and what challenges they face with their education. So it opens up more of a dialogue so you can also engage with youth and ask them what's the best way for us to approach you, or you can ask them for advice from a youth perspective.
Great, thank you, Dyresha. One other thing I wanted to say about the youth piece is that for all of the different youth engagement opportunities that are scattered throughout the trainer's guide, we put up front, there's actually 2 pages that are towards the beginning of the trainer's guide where we excerpted just the youth engagement points that are scattered throughout the training. And the idea with this is that if you do have a youth co-presenting with you, you can tear out those 2 sheets and provide them to the youth and say, here are the different places that we'd like you to provide feedback, and they can sort of easily go through it and map out for each one of the different questions what they're going to say. So there might be one question that says, here, we'd like you to share some information about the challenges that you faced when you were first enrolling in college. And then another one might say, here, we'd like you to share some information about how you felt about information about your foster care status being shared with others, or, and they're all sort of in one place so that youth can just have them real easily to look at and prepare themselves for the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Devin, who's going to walk through the slides, and we will have Rusty Johnson from Foster Club talking towards the end with some additional information about how to prepare youth for their participation in this. But before we do that, Devin's going to go ahead and actually walk through the content of the training.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Dyresha, very much for your contribution. Good morning, everybody. We're really excited to have this material for you to use on your campuses. And so what you see now on your slide is the beginning of the curriculum and the training. And so here's what it looks like. And this is the first 3 slides of the curriculum. And so really in the beginning, it's just quickly an opportunity for you to obviously pay tribute to the folks who contributed to the content of the training, and also a brief overview of the California College Pathways Project. So you can offer this to your attendees as a way to show that, not only are you doing work on your campus for foster youth, but there's really this statewide movement and momentum happening, and they could be part of that. And that could be really energizing as a way for you to launch into the material. If time permits, when you get to slide 3, as you see there, California College Pathways, you can open up the CCP website and perhaps show the attendees the area on our website labeled Campus Professionals and review some of those subcategories within the website if you see that they're interested, you know, and if they're engaged in kind of learning more, maybe signing up, becoming, you know, an adult advocate, and that would be a good way to kind of get them jazzed about this. And of course, as Debbie mentioned, make sure to review the presenter notes at the bottom of each slide to familiarize yourself with points to make and items to highlight as you go through the presentation, because the people on this call today, all of you guys are the most familiar, you know, with the individuals on your campus and what you feel is best to stress to cultivate the champions that you want to cultivate campus-wide. So the next slide here dives into the next section, which is really the nuts and bolts of child welfare. And it is really important to note that on the slide that reads closer to home, county-specific data, the one with the arrow pointing to it, you'll need to fill in the data prior to delivering the training. And this is the opportunity for you to really make the case on what's happening in that county that's closest to this campus you're delivering this material to. And it can really kind of help them understand, you know, the numbers of young people in care still through AB 12 or out of care who are potentially going to be or on their campus. And so what you'll do to get this information is you'll see in the presenter's note section of this slide, closer to home, county-specific data, there's a link there that you can copy and paste into like a Google or Safari search engine, and it will pull up a list of all the counties in California. Click on the county that's applicable to where you're delivering the training, and you can download the information and put the statistics into that slide. The next slides here continue to discuss the history of foster youth, what it means to be in the foster care system, and thoroughly explains the variety of experiences that foster youth face beginning at a very young age. As you review these slides, make sure to allow your attendees to ask questions or get more clarity if they have anything that is standing out for them that they want more information on. So this is the time to paint kind of the often unfortunate circumstances that our young people are subject to. And these are really the hard facts and sometimes uncomfortable, you know, to discuss. But it is extremely important to portray a clear picture of these young people. So faculty, staff, counselors, administrators, anybody else in the room listening to you who are new to these facts can understand how important their role is in the lives of foster youth and that they can do something. This next slide goes into the recent legislative policies that have been passed in the last couple of years. Many of you on this call are probably very familiar with these, but remember, your audience may not be. So this is really an opportunity, again, to show that California is taking great strides to really support current and former foster youth as it relates to them being in care and how that translates to going into college. So if you happen to know, or if you can do some research prior to delivering this training, it would be interesting to note, you know, how is priority enrollment happening on the campus where you're delivering the training, to give people a little primer on the number of young people who are taking advantage of it. And how maybe if you're the person doing the outreach for your foster youth as it relates to priority enrollment, what was the benefit? What are the results that you've seen? Are young people, are foster youth able to get their classes in time? Are you seeing that they're, you know, getting through quicker? So those are some really important points to make as you think about how these legislative changes are affecting the foster youth on the campus that you're training at locally. The next set of slides really dives into the section on adolescent brain development. And Rusty will talk about this a little bit later, but I just really want to pay tribute to Rusty, Dirisha, and Joel, all three from Foster Club, their input into this section. They were really helpful in suggesting that this section be previewed if you do decide or have the opportunity to present with a youth on your campus. It's really important to preview this section with them. You don't want to, set off any triggers with them as it relates to trauma and their experience in the system. So I'll have Rusty talk about that in a little bit. But so as I said, this really dives into brain development. And as you see here, the first slide is on trauma and brain development, and it explains that when a child is exposed or undergoes trauma at a young age, that affects the way in which their brains develop. And these slides continue to make the point that research really is showing that a child's brain will develop differently if exposed to trauma or toxic stress. And there could be gaps between their limbic system and their prefrontal cortex as a result of these two stressors. And as a result, the slide entitled Summary of Impact touches on a few of the outcomes or triggers that a young person can have. And as you see here, this is another opportunity for the people in the room that you're presenting this information to really understand the foster youth scenario, their experiences, and how that can then translate to how they are in the classroom, how they are academically. There is a very interesting activity that, again, I'm going to actually let Rusty talk about at the end as it relates to loss. And this is the activity that is engaging your attendees with colored Post-it notes. So I'll let him talk about that in a little bit. These next slides are continuing from the adolescent brain development section. And all of this information on brain development and potential challenges that foster youth may have is important for your attendees because it can provide them with insight, obviously, into a variety of issues or questions they may have. As I said earlier, about why students are behaving the way they are. Take a look at the slide entitled Mental Health Warning Signs. Having the awareness that these indicators could be signs of mental health issues will hopefully empower the faculty and staff, counselors, program coordinators on your campus to reach out to that student and to go the extra mile to find that student proper support. So this is kind of a humdrum section, but it's a really important section, as you can see. And what we thought that is important to end on a high note is the resiliency slide. And that is where kind of the idea that even though our young people have possibly been subject to some of this toxic stress and trauma at a young age, they're extremely resilient. And they're extremely committed, to changing their story and to, changing their quality of life, which is really exciting. And then the last slide, putting it into perspective, is a great video, and it's quick and to the point, and it nicely summarizes everything you just reviewed. So sometimes the brain stuff can get a little tricky and confusing if you're not like a biology major, or a neuroscientist. And so this is a really nice, quick video that summarizes everything that you went through nicely. Here's the next section in our training on foster youth in college. The next few slides will go into detail on what foster youth say that they want to go to college, as many of you know, and statistics about how many get there versus how many complete. And the content included on the 3 slides speak to the fact that we know our foster youth want to go, but as we all know on this call, not as many of them get there, and even a smaller percentage complete. So the continue to discuss a few of the reasons foster youth experience poor academic outcomes, and then delves into the academic delays that can result. So again, this is painting the realistic, hard facts about the realities of our foster youth in California, and hopefully garnering support from the people in the room saying, I want to help, what can I do? The first slide here, barriers to retention, reviews a few of them that foster youth face as they're trying to stay in school and they're trying to persist from one semester to the next. And then the other slide here shows the statistics, on the number of foster youth who persist in a community college for at least 1 year. And again, great to have the numbers to drive home the point that what faculty are doing in their classrooms matters. How counselors are conducting their counseling sessions matters. And they are also very pivotal people in the life, in the experience of our foster youth on our campuses and helping them stick to it and go through semester to semester. So here we have the slides on our different campus support programs across the state, or campus support options. And it's really an opportunity for you to introduce the various types of support that are present on college campuses. Obviously, I mean, you may know that many of the people who will be attending this training may not know that these support programs exist. This could be their first introduction to the fact that there are Guardian Scholars programs or there are FYSI liaisons. So if the person delivering this training is not the campus support program lead for foster youth, make sure, if you can, to have that person there to say hello, introduce themselves to the group, and describe kind of what's happening on your campus to make it really kind of close to home for the people that are attending the training. Because then they can, of course, get really excited that their campus is doing something, intentional for this population. And hopefully they'll, raise their hand and say, how can I help at the end? The last slide is a great video which gives a nice kind of multimedia depiction of what foster youth say about college and their support needs. So it tracks a few different campus support programs across the state and what young people say about their experience in being part of those programs and how critical they were to their opportunities to persist and to complete, be that transfer or get a degree. The last part of the training is really a great way to finish, because it's asking the people in the room what they think they can do or what they already may be doing for foster youth, right? So this is where you share all of the different ways that faculties, counselors, and staff can support foster youth. The first few slides here briefly review the research and planning group's 6 student success factors that they identified after reviewing after interviewing thousands of community college students across the state. They came up with these 6 factors that you see here on your screen. Directed, focused, nurtured, engaged, connected, and valued. And if you want more information on this report, you can go to the RP website as well. So these 6 factors are the premise for the next few slides. What you will see is when you're presenting this section in the trainer's guide, we cue you to allow your attendees to share what their thoughts are prior to displaying the 2 slides that you see now. So a slide will pop up that says, how can faculty help? And this is a really great opportunity for you to engage your faculty in the room. What are they saying? They could come up with some really cool ideas that, maybe aren't on these slides. And so allow those ideas to share amongst people in the room. And then depending upon what is not shared, you can then quickly review the bullets here that you see on these 2 slides to add some other ideas of how faculty can support our young people. And then the next section here is counselors and support staff. And again, in the trainer's guide, what you'll see is another way of, is the same way that you did with the faculty piece. Counselors slide will come up, query the people, in your audience, who is the counselor, who is the support staff in the room, who's an administrator in the room, what are you doing, or what can you do to support foster youth? Let them share, let them engage, and then you can pull these slides up and go through any of those that weren't mentioned. And then the last slide is really, a wrap up and ending on a high note and a call, to action. So we want everyone to believe in foster youth, and we want to paint a picture that foster youth are resilient, and they do want to excel, and they are there to be a dedicated student, and they may just need more support from the people who you're delivering this training to. And so the people on this call today, you guys are the folks to let these folks know on campus that you need them, that this is a group effort, that it takes a village, right? And so that's what we want really to share. So that's a quick overview of the slides. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rusty to provide an overview of the feedback and recommendations that he and his core leadership team, foster youth members, gave to us in writing this training. So Rusty?
All right. Well, thank you, Devin and Debbie. We're really, really excited about this training and this curriculum, and I hope everybody else is excited about it. And part of the exciting thing is that the core leadership team, which is a group of youth I specifically work with throughout California with Foster Club. I'll tell you just a little bit about Foster Club in a second here, but more importantly, the core youth leadership team is foster youth that were raised in the system and now are foster youth scholars on college campuses throughout California. And this core leadership team got together and they advised on this curriculum. So the curriculum that you see in front of you has actually been edited, has had suggestions be given, and kind of by the experts, by the actual foster youth. And that's really where Foster Club comes in, is our expertise is youth engagement. We're a national organization here that ultimately is built for the youth, empowered by the youth. And that's kind of our job is again, the youth engagement section. So us coming in, doing the youth engagement, working with the core leadership team, and working with this curriculum, again, it's been a huge honor, and that is one of the biggest suggestions I can give to everybody on this call today, is to encourage you to engage the youth with this curriculum. And with engaging the youth, a couple of things that go along with that we did talk about, and we talked about when we were advising with the curriculum with College Pathways. First off, preparing the youth. And I know Debbie mentioned this. I know that Dirisha, our CLT youth, mentioned this, and I know that also Devin mentioned it. So obviously very important to prepare the youth. When we're talking about preparing the youth, I know there was made mention of a youth guide, something strategic, an outline to have the youth go off of. One of the worst questions you could possibly ask a former foster youth alumni or a youth scholar when presenting this training is, well, tell us a little bit about your story in foster care. That's not something that necessarily we want to ask. That opens up a whole different ballgame. We want to be specific. We want to be strategic. Form an outline. Specifically, can you talk a little bit about your education experience, in college, or about what a professor actually did to help you with one of your struggles? These very, very specific things. So again, being specific, using that youth guide, again, taking time even prior with the youth that will be engaged in your training. Don't be afraid to invite them in, or to, if you're working with the people presenting this curriculum, that you tell them, bring in the youth prior. Sit down, talk with them, Go over the guide. Have the youth ask any questions at this point behind closed doors before they get up in front of the audience to co-present. So take some time. I think Devin mentioned specifically on the brain development section. This is something that we did bring up to College Pathways, and the youth brought up that there are things that may trigger some of the youth that will be co-presenting on this curriculum, trigger things from their past, specifically about the brain development. The brain development. This is not things typically that the youth even think about, or this may be the first time that they've even heard this aspect or the aspect of the training. So again, to even give them the materials in advance, to have them look it over and make sure that this isn't something that just goes kind of off the fly. So a couple of other just quick general notes. I know, again, this is something that's been kind of echoed throughout this call. Stay upbeat. Devin, I loved your words. These youth are resilient. These youth are champions. Use those words. Use those words and use those words to energize your audience and to energize those who will be presenting this training. Be mindful of your language. For instance, you have, specific language that's been used in this curriculum, such as, despite all odds, foster youth are entering college. Despite these statistics, if you find things when you are stating these grim statistics, make sure that you follow things up and talk about that they are still making it into college. And that will also even inspire the youth that you may have in the training or the youth that is even co-presenting with you. So Devin also made mention of some activities that are being incorporated into the curriculum. Specific activity we are talking about here is this Post-it note activity, and this is in section 2, speaking about loss. And the activity that we're talking about here is 3 different colors of Post-it notes that you will have. And it can be, for instance, blue, yellow, and green. These 3 Post-it notes represent 3 different categories, such as possessions, people, and hobbies. So each of the participants will get 3 different colors of Post-it notes. And you ask them to write down on these Post-it notes, for instance, the blue, write down a person that is very important in your life. The yellow, write down a hobby, your best hobby, or your favorite hobby. And then the green, write down your most prized possession, and you put that on the Post-it note. Then you can single out 1 or 2 people in your audience, and you go and you take 2 of those Post-it notes away from them. Now, of course, I've seen drastic things done before where they rip up the Post-it notes, or they do, and you're going to be able to read your audience and know that. The point is looking at what was taken away. Would you be able to survive with what was taken away? How would you feel with that when it was taken away? What would you do? And this is talking about loss, talking about what our youth have went through, what they may still currently be going through when they do get into an academic institution, especially with higher education. So again, it is just an activity to really kind of, put home a little bit the emphasis on loss. So creative things in this curriculum that we've taken some time to put in there for you. Make the training very relevant to the audience. Your audience, again, you're going to know your audience or the folks that you're teaching to teach this curriculum. You're going to know the audience best. So make it relevant to that audience. So for instance, maybe something you would want to start with is, why are we doing this training? Doesn't everybody have problems? Or I should say, the youth that are in college, they all have difficulties, and that is a true statement. Everybody comes to college. I came to college with my own baggage. So what makes foster kids unique? Well, one of the very first things that make foster kids unique is they don't know necessarily how to ask for help. Now, I know that's actually a general statement. Some do. But a good majority may not know how to ask for help. And why is this? Because youth that were being raised in foster homes may have been conditioned that asking for help could get them in trouble. Asking for help would be a miscommunication for various reasons. Asking for help, so the mindset of a lot of, or I should again be careful and caution myself here being so general, but the mindset of the professors in my college, I could say with my personal experience, where, this is kind of the adult world where you need to kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps in college and, in a sense, prove yourself. Well, just being mindful that a lot of these youth, again, may not know how to ask for help. And the responsibility, and again, we actually cover a lot of that sort of, those sort of topics within the psychological section. But, and then again, that's part of just knowing the why of why you're there and expressing that to the attendees. Being a resource, please know your information when the folks come with questions after the training, maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days. Know the material well enough yourself that you can provide maybe a little bit of guidance on it. But even more than that, know the resources such as college pathways, such as Foster Club. We are more than happy to help out. On your college on your college campus, I'm sure you have a lot of foster youth right there that can be a resource, maybe even a foster youth alumni group that you can tap into. And we invite you to do that. And we're also very, very happy to help out with, be it Foster Club and or College Pathways, to help find foster youth that can co-present this curriculum with you on your campus. So again, we're happy, and we're happy to be here and be a resource. Most of all, thank you so much for bringing this curriculum. And I'm echoing our core leadership team. They all wanted me to specifically say thank you to everybody who's going to be presenting this curriculum, and for those of you who are going to bat to get this curriculum put out on your campus. And it means so much. It means so much for me as a former foster youth myself, raised in over 20 different homes, now working with foster youth. And myself, I was one of the few that made it through college, and it was a struggle. But if it wasn't for the campus, actually some professors, but if it wasn't for the admission lady that took me under her wing, and my financial aid counselor that took me under his wing, I probably wouldn't have made it through school. And that trusted me, let me grow, and taught me something. So thank you for bringing this training to campus. It's going to kind of give some youth the exact same chance that all of our CLT and myself got. So without further ado, Devin and Debbie, I'll kind of pass it back to you. And again, with huge gratitude, thank you.
Thank you, Rusty, very much for that, that input that you guys gave. Yeah, it was really helpful for Debbie and I to have Foster Club's input. And with that, I'd like to say that we are very excited to have Brianna Boykin from Norco College on the call with us today. We were asked by Norco College to come and present this training. It was, I think, our second one, and Carol Davies from the Career Ladders Project joined me. And I believe it was a Flex Day activity. And Brianna, I would love to hear the input, the feedback that you received from your campus community.
Definitely. I know I appreciated it, just to start off. What I appreciated most, definitely the stories that our youth shared with the faculty audience, as well as there's some staff members there as well. But I really appreciated that the look on the faculty's faces as they're walking away, like, wow, I never thought about this. I never, realized that our students, like the depths of what they're struggling with. And so you saw, as a result, just a desire to be more compassionate. One of the questions that was asked, I think one of the faculty members asked, how does it make you feel when you have an instructor teaching the class, and we communicate with you via email a lot, and we're telling you what to do a lot, and it's coming from a place of authority. How does that make you feel? And the students responded, it's hard for us because authority is what took us out of our homes, and it really is intimidating for us to talk to faculty. So we were able to kind of problem solve there. And what can faculty do? What can even staff and administrators do to make the youth feel more welcome? And we all agreed, after just hearing from the youth, that the tone, even in our email communications, just needs to be more level and more welcoming instead of so authoritative all the time. And there is a time and a place for that. But if the youth know that faculty care and that administrators care, because they do, but if they knew that, then it would create a more trusting environment. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways, and I think everyone still talks about that to this day. We definitely need more trainings like this. And it was a flex day, so it's hard to get everyone out here, but those who attended really appreciated it.
And thank you, Brianna. Did you have people reach back out to you? Have you gotten folks to come out of the woodworks and say, "What can I do to help?" Anything like that?
Definitely right around that time. And now we're talking about it still, but everyone's kind of back busy again. And so I think it's time for another one. I think we're ready for you to come back out. But yesterday, it's funny that you asked that. Yesterday, I wear my blue ribbon because we have a college-bound day where we invite our high school youth out and we welcome them to college and help them get their financial aid done and their application to Norco College done. And I had a blue ribbon. And one of the faculty members asked me, "Oh, what does that stand for?" I know pink is breast cancer, and I just, briefly told her that we're a foster youth-friendly campus, and she was really impressed, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, when are they doing the next training?" So there's definitely a lot of dialogue going on, and more, everyone wants to be involved. So
that's great, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your contribution, and now I am going to turn it back over to Debbie. To go through some of the questions that arose as we were going through. Debbie?
Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much. So for folks on the call, if you do have questions or comments about the training, feel free to either send them through the question panel, or you can go ahead and raise your virtual hand and we'll unmute you. I'd be interested, I know there's actually a couple of other folks on the call who did participate in one of these trainings, just to give people a little background about how we sort of rolled out the training. We had a number of different people provide input or material, so I want to give a couple quick shout outs to Carol Davies, who's actually on the call with Career Ladders Project, who provided a lot of the information for the brain development piece. Also to Kibby Lopez from Cal State Fresno, who also provided some feedback on the content. And then we sort of piloted the training about 3 or 4 times. We sort of took it out to some different college campuses to test drive it, see how it went. We brought it back and made some additional edits to it based on sort of feedback that we got through actually delivering the training. So Brianna was one of those. Norco College is one of those campuses. There was our test run, and there are, like I said, a couple other folks on the call who also did have the training delivered at their campus. So if anybody who would be interested in sharing, we'd love to sort of hear your thoughts on it, so feel free to raise your virtual hand. I'd also be interested to hear from folks just kind of your thoughts in general about your experience, if you've done any kind of training about foster youth on your campus, not necessarily the specific one, and what you feel like faculty and staff got out of that, and what you kind of recommend for other folks on the call who might be interested in providing this kind of information. We haven't really gotten much in the way of questions, so perhaps we just did a really thorough job in delivering the material to you. But like I said, if you've got anything to say or ask, you can either type it in your questions panel or raise your virtual hand. So I'll give a couple of minutes to see if there's anybody. Valerie Garcia from UC Davis, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hello, this is Valerie Garcia from UC Davis Guardian Scholars. So I do every year have a training for my mentors, and with a lot of this information in terms of background information about where these foster youth are coming from, or where they might be coming from, kind of an overall general idea of what foster youth experiences might have been, sort of the effects of it, just kind of like a lot of things that you guys already presented. The other thing I also do is also let them know about some of how their roles, importance of them in the foster youth's lives, especially starting from now. I also do some simulations, some other activities to get them to understand you know, where some of the students are coming from. So I do one activity that's kind of my favorite activity is I have them remember back when they were anywhere between the ages of 18 and 24 and where they were, what was happening in their lives, and also to you know, to reflect on like maybe some people that might have helped them during that time or or the type of person they could have used help from. And that way they also get an understanding that it's not just them like knowing more than the student, but also them being able to relate to the student and the student being able to relate to them, and and mentoring in any way is really trying to be more like a partnership rather than an adult-child kind of role. So I think anything like this is so valuable to have them understand where the student perspectives are, but also letting them know that they're also just regular students as well. They have a background of information, and they may follow some of these, you know, challenges, but a lot of the students could also be just, you know, their challenges are not necessarily related to foster youth experiences. It could be just the same as a lot of other students' challenges like time management that, you know, they may have never been taught those kinds of things either. So, you know, treating them, you know, with what they have, with the challenges that they actually have rather than trying to assume challenges just because they're foster youth. And that's what I usually also try to put in when I'm doing training as well.
Great, thank you so much. That's really useful information. Ann Ratto, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If I'm remembering correctly, Ann is with Gavilan College. Do I have that right?
Yes, that is right. We were one of the test colleges to look at the training, and we presented, had Devan present to our Student Services Council. So probably 15 to 18 people, counselors, staff, everybody from Student Services, plus our Vice President. And it was very powerful. I think people had a lot of questions and curiosity, because we're running our program pretty much through our EOPS program, but of course there are foster youth that don't fit into the program because they're not coming full time. And I really think it's well worth having this presentation on your campus. It's really an eye-opener, and the evaluations were super positive.
Great, thank you so much. Just got a comment from Lil Sass at Citrus College. They do foster youth training over there, and their department was asked to do a presentation at their Fall Flex Day, so they're going to use this curriculum as well as some additional items that she has. So that's great. Thank you, Lil, for that feedback. It's great to know. Anybody else on the call either have a question or a comment? Any questions for Rusty about the youth engagement piece? Unfortunately, we'd originally planned to have Darisha on for the whole call, and she was going to be providing some additional information, but she got called into work at the last minute, so she's no longer on the call. But other questions or just thoughts people have? Okay, I'm going to unmute Marina Fox. Marina, if you can start by saying who you're with, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm actually with California State University, Chico, and I was just recently hired in January, so we're a very new program. And so I'm the Foster Youth Program Coordinator, and we actually just named our program with the input of the students who attend here, and we're actually called PATH Scholars. And so PATH is an acronym for Promoting Achievement Through Hope. And anyway, being a new program, this presentation is going to be really valuable as I move forward in, speaking with faculty and staff and different departments. So I'm really grateful, and I'm glad that I joined this call today.
Great, thank you so much. If anybody else, give a couple more minutes. See if anybody has any additional thoughts that you want to share. And of course, Devin and I are available, and our information is up there on that slide, and most of you have our information. And so when it comes time for you to deliver this, if there's anything in the trainer's guide that's not clear, or you just want some feedback, definitely feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help you in whatever way we can. Before we sign off,
this is Devin. Sorry, really quickly. Since we didn't have a comment from one of the campuses in San Diego because they're not on the call today, but Rusty and I did do 2 back-to-back Flex Day trainings in San Diego, and if I can say the comment that I received from one of the faculty members, that it was the best Flex Day training she'd been to in like over a decade, and that was just so confirming that it's well worth it, and it's well worth to get on your campus's Flex Day or professional development calendars for the folks on your campuses. It was a huge compliment to hear that, because she just, you know, didn't know. Again, it's just the unknown, and now bringing it to light for her. So just thought I'd chime in. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So last thing I want to say is that if you do end up using this curriculum on your campus, all of it or part of it, if you remember to just shoot us a quick email and let us know. We'd love to sort of track the degree to which this is used, and if you do have any feedback after you deliver it, definitely let us know. You know, we can always make adjustments to it if we discover that there's ways that it could be improved upon. As a reminder, the next one of these calls will be in 2 months, and so that will be the first Wednesday in June at 10 o'clock, and so that will be June 4th at 10 a.m., and you'll certainly receive emails from us with that information as well. And so that is the presentation for this morning. Thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to talking with you soon. That ends this morning's web seminar.